In this section, we'll discuss water movement through plants. Let's begin with a review of the water cycle. Plants participate in Earth's water cycle. Water flows from groundwater into roots, upward through plants, and into leaves. Water evaporates from leaves into the atmosphere in a process of transpiration. Plant water flow. Plant vasculature, or veins, runs throughout plants carrying water, solutes, and the products of photosynthesis. The vasculature carries water from roots through stems and into leaves and flowers. You can see this vasculature drawn here of the water moving. All right, so in the plant vasculature, there are two main things we have to know. We have to know what xylem are and what phloem are. The xylem is responsible for carrying water and solutes from the soil up into all parts of the plant in a one-way direction. You can see that indicated by the blue lines going from the ground, from the root system, up to the stem and out to leaves, okay? Phloem, so big picture here, xylem is only one directional, from the ground, from the soil, up into the plant. Phloem carries the products of photosynthesis in both directions, from leaves into the growing tips of the plant, which are known as the apical meristems, and down to the roots. There are three water routes through plants. The apoplastic root. In this route, water and solutes flow up through xylem, through non-living vasculature, outside living cells, and along the cellulose cell walls left behind. The symplastic route. This route involves cytoplasmic streaming through cells, from cell to cell, through plasmodesmata, or plant cell junctions. And then finally, transmembrane route. In this route, movement is through osmosis across cell membranes, as in guard cells. It is not necessary to memorize these terms. Considering the three routes allows us to review and link together biology concepts. Transpiration. Imagine that the water in a tree is like a column of water rising from the ground to the tips of the leaves against the force of gravity. Transpiration is the evaporation of water from the leaves. The loss of water from the top of the water column decreases the pressure on the column, helping the water rise. The decrease in pressure is also known as negative pressure. So you can see, as water transpires from these leaves, we're decreasing the pressure at the top of this column of water, allowing more water to continue to rise. While transpiration results in a negative pressure on the water column at the top of the tree, water absorption by roots exerts a positive pressure at the bottom of the tree. So we have a negative pressure up at the top from transpiration and a positive pressure down at the bottom from water absorption. Wet soil enhances osmosis into roots and applies a positive pressure to the bottom of the water column. The push from the roots and the pull from the leaves ensure that water flows upward through xylem and reaches every cell in the plant. Example 1, plant water flow. Recall the information about the chemistry of water that you learned during the Origins of Life unit. What are the intramolecular and intermolecular properties of water that allow a column of water in a tree to reach a height of 100 meters in opposition to gravity? Explain your answer. Okay, let's first define the two intra and intermolecular forces at play here. The intramolecular force is the force between the atoms of the water molecule, And those are what we know to be polar covalent bonds, which make water a polar molecule. The intermolecular force is the main driving force between the molecules, holding them together. And those are hydrogen bonds between water molecules. Okay, so we've answered the first part of the question. What are the intra and intermolecular properties of water that allow this to occur? Now we're going to explain why that's the case. The polar covalent bonds in a water molecule lead to hydrogen bonding, which gives water cohesion. Because water is polar, it is attracted to other polar substances, leading to adhesion. Water adheres to cellulose, the main component of phloem and xylem. Together, cohesion and adhesion lead to capillary action. What's in a leaf? Water enters through the leaf veins and exits as a gas. So, see our liquid water here entering through the leaf veins. Okay. Sunlight providing energy. And then leaving is water as a gas, oxygen as a gas through the capture of carbon dioxide. Okay, so here's the general equation for the photosynthesis happening in this leaf. Carbon dioxide here, absorbed here, plus liquid water, when provided some light energy from the sun here, produces sugars and oxygen. So you can see the sugars moving out here and the oxygen moving out here. Then in addition to that, some of this water is evaporated off the leaf as a gas. When considering water flow through plants, the important parts of the leaf are the vein, waxy cuticles, spongy mesophyll, guard cells, and stomata or stoma. In the image is a cross-section of a broad leaf. So imagine taking a broad leaf and cutting it in half so that you could see from top to bottom inside the leaf. We're going to look at each of these important parts in the next few slides, but you can see some of them here. The cuticle at the top and bottom, guard cell, spongy mesophyll. So let's take a look at them. A leaf is a photosynthetic organ. It's a sunlight catcher and sugar factory. The leaf has many unique characteristics that enable this. The waxy cuticle, labeled here at the top, protects from excessive water loss. Remember that some water is lost as a gas through transpiration, and that's necessary to keep that pressure that we talked about to allow water to continue to flow upward. But too much water loss is not good, and so the waxy cuticle protects from excessive water loss because waxes are lipid barriers. The central vein, right here, and remember we're looking at a cross section here, so if you're looking straight in, water would be flowing straight in or straight out of the page. The central vein brings water from stems and branches to reach the entire leaf. The stomata or stoma are gates created by guard cells on the lower side of most broadleaves that open and close due to osmotic controls. You can see that gate here. And they're near a guard cell as they're created by those guard cells. And depending on the osmotic pressure and other environmental factors, these stoma or stomata can open and close. That's why they're gates. The spongy mesophyll are air spaces that allow for gas storage and exchange, labeled here. And chloroplasts are located near the top of the leaf in the palisade mesophyll. Gas exchange. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration require gas exchange. During photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water react with energy from sunlight, producing sugars and oxygen. During cell respiration, sugars and oxygen react to produce ATP molecules and waste products, carbon dioxide and water. ATP stores the energy that came from the sun until the energy is needed for life processes. A diagram of these processes is included on the following slide. So let's take a look first at photosynthesis. We have to start with carbon dioxide and water, which I'll start over here. If we have an input of carbon dioxide and water and sunlight, energy in the form of sunlight, we end up with oxygen as a product and glucose as a product. Okay. Now, the second process, cell respiration, uses that glucose and an input of oxygen to produce energy in the form of ATP plus carbon dioxide and water, which can then be used with the addition of sunlight to produce glucose and oxygen, and we can continue the cycle. Stomata, which is the plural form of the word, are sometimes called stoma, also plural, or stomate is singular gate. So stomata are gates that open and close at different times of day, allowing gas molecules to diffuse into and out of the spongy mesophyll. Rates of transpiration are higher when stomata are open because water vapor diffuses through open stomata. The opening and closing of stomata is caused by environmental factors. During the day in temperate climates, light sends a signal that causes many biochemical responses. One of them is the opening of specialized potassium ion channels in guard cell membranes. When these channels open, potassium ions diffuse into guard cells. Their tonicity increases and their osmotic potential increases. Water then flows into the guard cells through aquaporins toward the higher ion concentration. As their central vacuoles swell, the guard cells swell and stomata open. Late in the day, as the sun goes down, potassium ions flow out of the guard cells and stomata close. Let's look at a diagram of this process on the next slide. So on the left, we see an image of the stoma opening. Sunlight signals cause potassium ions to flow into guard cells, and the guard cells are then swollen. When that happens, the stoma opens. On the right, decreasing sunlight causes the potassium ions to flow out of the guard cells. You can see them all outside now. So then the water will move out of the guard cells and they will shrink. And in doing so, the stoma will close. Example 2, stomata. Use natural selection and evolution principles to make the following prediction. When stomata are open, plants lose water. Predict how the stomata of cacti have evolved under the strong selection pressure to retain water. 2. In temperate forests, broadleaf plants have stomata on the underside of their leaves. Predict the location of water lily stomata, given the strong natural selection pressure to exchange gases. So first, let's predict how the stomata of cacti have evolved under the strong selection pressure to retain water. The leaves of cacti are very narrow and pointed, minimizing the surface area exposed to the sun, and the stomata are small. Now let's predict the location of water lily stomata given the strong natural selection pressure to exchange gases. The water lily stomata then have to be on the top of the leaves to expose them to the air away from the water.